You want to know my thoughts on the playoffs? Let me just write it out for you. You see that? JOKE. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the episode of MDK Racing Victory Stop. I'm in complete shock right now. I don't know what to say. I'm in absolute shock. Kevin Harvick, 9-time winner with 20 top 5s, 26 top 10s, had an average finish of 7.1. Will not race for the championship. If you don't think this playoffs is a joke, then I think you're something else. I'll just say that. Now, we can argue on whether or not this playoff system is garbage. I think it is. But I will say this. Martinsville. What a race. I'd say that's race of the year. Race of the year, 100%. Fantastic racing, a lot of storylines. I'll give it credit in terms of the playoffs helped it, but it's still BS. But what a race. What a race. We should have made Martinsville a cutoff race when we had the playoff grid implemented in 2014. Martinsville should have been the cutoff race right then and there, but better late than never. But holy crap, what a race this was. Now, like I said, really the only driver that was safe was Joey Logano. And this race proved that Logano was the only driver safe. Harvick and Hamlin, especially those two drivers, were this close from both either missing it or making it. The entire race overall was dominated by Chase Elliott. He led the most laps and he won the race. He came in clutch. He entered into this race 6-25, I believe, behind Brad Keselowski. He basically needed to win if he wanted to have a shot at Phoenix next week, and he did just that. So huge props to the 9 team, especially this move, which I think has to be the move of the year. Entering pit road, around near the middle part of stage 3, Chase Elliott, who was the leader, or if not near the front of the pack, came out to pit road to do perform his normal pit stops. Well, the Jackman came out way before Elliott was anywhere near the pit stall. That would have been a penalty for jumping over the wall too soon. But in a rule I didn't think was possible, the Jackman then jumped out back behind the wall, just then jumped back over the wall to then complete the pit stop. It was a lot slower. Chase went from, I want to say, second or third to maybe 4th or 11th. 4th to around outside the top 10. I'm not sure exactly. But that right there saved Chase Elliott's season, because had the Jackman stayed on the racetrack, Elliott would have gotten a penalty for being over the wall too soon, and that more than likely would have prevented Elliott from winning this race. Now, Kevin Harvick. Wow, his day was just a roller coaster. First of all, what a season he had. 9 wins. That the most out of anyone, by far. He had the most top 5s, the most top 10s, best average finish out of anyone this season. He was the car to beat. But at Martinsville, he was the guy that everyone could beat. He had such an ill-handling race car. Finished 14th in stage 1. He was already falling back quickly. I think he qualified around 6th or 8th. I'm not sure, but it was on the inside lane. Quickly fell back like a rock. And the entire race, Harvick had to do catch-up mode. Him and his team worked on the car all day long to try and catch up with the field. But then what happened in stage 2 would change everything, because before that, Harvick, he had a bad day, but he was still in terms of he still had a good buffer. It wasn't until stage 2, this was during a commercial break, Harvick cuts a left rear tire during a green flag sequence. He has to come onto pit road and goes 2 laps down. 1 lap down is already pretty difficult at a track like Martinsville, but going 2 laps down is even more difficult. On top of that, when you throw in that Harvick, unlike Chase Elliott's car, Harvick was not good. He had a really bad race car, so he couldn't even contend with competitors like Ty Dillon, Bubba Wallace, Michael McDowell. Drivers that were around the 18th to 25th area, he could not compete against them. That's how bad, that's how much Harvick struggled in this race. The entire race, Harvick was fighting just to be the first car to be in the free pass position. Finally, he got a couple breaks. Some cautions came around his way. He took the wave around to get back on the 1 lap down part of the track. And then another caution came out. And it took about 2 or 3 times for a caution to come out for Harvick to finally be able to get in the free pass position. Because Elliott, who was a leader at the time, either Elliott or Truex or Logano, they were just keep on putting cars lap down. And obviously, once you put a car lap down, then Harvick moves out of the free pass position. So Harvick was just chasing. He kept on chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing the entire day. And it was a lot of fun to watch. I'm going to explain my thoughts on the playoff and everything that went on. But from a race perspective, it was fantastic. The battles were incredible, especially even later on in the race. The battles were still just so much fun to watch. Martins Jr., another driver that needed to win the race in order to advance, he also had a really good car. And with around 50 or so laps ago, Truex Jr. was out in front. Chase Elliott was started around 3rd or 4th on a restart. But then, then catastrophe strikes for Truex. He then reports with under 43 to go that he has a possible loose wheel, and the team tried to stay out as long as possible. Then I believe around 38 laps ago, or 38 to 25 to go actually, Truex, he couldn't take it. The loose wheel was just too much for him to handle, and he had to come onto pit road, and that ended his championship hopes. But the battles to get into the Final Four was action-packed, was basically, you really didn't know who was going to be in the Final Four until the checker flag wave. Kevin Harvick was starting to get back into form. After the first 2 stages where he was just awful, finally around stage 3, it seemed like the car was starting to come back to life. He really started to pass cars. The problem is that Brad Keselowski, who was 4th entering this race, plus 25, he was also trying to gain positions and gain more points. The reason why was because during the last or second last pit stop, Keselowski, I believe, had a penalty and had to go to the back end of the field. Denny Hamlin, earlier in the race, also had a penalty and he had to start at the back end of the field. So 3 drivers that we expected to be making it into the Final Four were all now behind multiple cars and had to race their way back. Hamlin, in my opinion, was the worst of the 3. He was not as good as clicking off race cars. In fact, near the end of the race, he was starting to lose even more positions, while Harvick and Keselowski were starting to gain positions. So you would see the last 20 laps or so, +2 Keselowski, +2 Hamlin, -2 Harvick, and then -1 Harvick, +1 Hamlin. It was 1 to 2 points. The points were switching every single lap. And then it got to a point where Brad Keselowski made, I think, the biggest move he's made this season. He passed Alex Bowman for 4th place with just a handful of laps to go. That gave Keselowski a 2-point buffer. Denny Hamlin was starting to fall back, even so that Eric Jones was starting to get on Hamlin's bumper. And if Eric Jones, who had another driver behind him, if they were to pass Hamlin, then Hamlin would be below the cut line. Kevin Harvick needed to pass 2 cars. He needed to pass DiBenedetto and needed to pass Kyle Busch to make it into the Final Four. He passed DiBenedetto and was starting to run down Kyle Busch. Elliott would go on to win the race, and on the final lap, Harvick, out of one last act out of desperation, gets into turns 3 and 4, side by side with Kyle. Off of turn 4, he just turns Kyle Busch. Busch spins as well as Kevin Harvick. Harvick, though, backs it into the outside wall or to the inside wall, and I think finishes 15th or something like that. You can see the results on the left side of your screen, as well as other stage results and stats and information. But yeah, I mean, that was just a last act out of desperation, just to try and get one more spot. It wasn't the right thing to do, but in this playoff grid, in this championship format, you have to do things like that in order to advance. So, but I feel so bad for Kevin Harvick. I'm not the biggest Harvick fan, but there is great season, and then there is domination. Harvick was domination. He had the 4th highest wins out of anyone in NASCAR's modern era to not win the championship. I think Gordon won 10 or 11 races, didn't win it. I think Elliott won 13 races and didn't win it. Harvick had 9 wins and didn't win it. In fact, that ties for most amount of wins without a championship to Carl Edwards back in 2008. But again, Harvick just had a dominating season. Everyone had him a lock for the championship 4. And this is going to lead in to my thoughts on the playoff grid. In terms of the race, so much fun to watch. It was exciting. It was interesting from start to finish. But now let's take a look at the playoff format, how it's represented. You have, again, Kevin Harvick, who was the guy to beat. 9 wins. Won the regular season championship. Out of the 35 races, he was the best in 33 of them. He had 2 bad races in the round of 8. 16th place last weekend at Texas, and he had a bad race today at Martinsville. I ask you guys this question. If you were the best for 34 races, or for 33 races, and you weren't the best for 2 races, and you don't make it to the championship race, is that fair? That's a simple question. Do you think that's fair? Because I know a lot of people are going to use this as a way to say, oh, hey, he had he played the rules the same as everyone else. He had to make it to Phoenix. He didn't. Elliott, he also had to make it to Phoenix, and he won. He accomplished the goal. Harvick didn't. And while I get that. Harvick, he had to play under the same rules as everyone else. I get that. But does it still make up for how BS this format is? Again, you have the best driver this season. The most dominating season we have ever seen in years. Missed the championship 4. People are going to bring up the football idea, which I think is the dumbest reasoning behind this to defend the playoff format. If you're going to bring up a football comparison like the 2008 Patriots, they won every single race and lost in the every single game and lost in the Super Bowl. Fair. But again, number 1, is this football? No. Number 2, you have to understand that the NFL, they do not play every single team. In fact, you probably play maybe less than half of every team in the NFL. So you don't really know who's better. You also have to take a look at the, I think it was the NFC East right now, and look at that division with the Eagles and the Cowboys and how bad they are. One of them is going to make it to the playoffs, but you kind of need the playoffs because you could be the best in your division, but when you go up against the real competition, against your other defenders, you might not be so lucky. With NASCAR, you face the same drivers each and every single week. You already know who's the best of the best. So why do you need a playoffs to see who is the best of the best when you already know who that best of the best is? People always say that you need the playoffs for the races to be interesting. Now, this race would help that statement. But at the same time, I don't think you need the playoffs for racing to be interesting. Again, you look at 2011, 2004, 1992. You look at those championship battles, and they were iconic. It happened naturally. It had the best of the best through the entire season step up to the plate at the final races of the season. With this, when you take a look at this playoff format, this championship 4, you had Logano, respectable. Yes, he deserves to be in the championship 4. You had Keselowski, and you had Hamlin. Those 3, I feel like, deserve to be in the championship 4. Now, let's take a look at Chase Elliott. Now, Elliott, I do not want to put down his performance. Unbelievable performance he put on today at Martinsville. Came in clutch. Props to him. But when you take a look at his season, and then you compare that to Harvick's season, you can see, okay, well, how that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't seem fair how Elliott makes it, yet he had a much worse season than Kevin Harvick, who was just dominating the entire NASCAR season. I right now don't know how to feel about this. Like, I want to say that this proved. I don't want to say that the championship doesn't mean anything, but it's not as valuable as it was in previous years. That's a hot take I'm gonna say. When you take a look at the championship in previous years, it was the best of the best. Now, you don't have to be the best in order to win the championship. You don't. And again, I know people are going to bring up, but it's made the race entertaining. It's made races entertaining. And while I agree with you to an extent, where's the line between entertainment and integrity? If we go so far for entertainment, would that hurt the value of the product? Because take a look on social media right now. So many people, almost every single time after a driver wins a championship, nowadays it's not the question of how dominant was this driver. Now it's the question of, did he really deserve it? Think about it. Ever since this playoff grid or this playoff elimination style format was implemented, almost every single year you've had to ask the driver or ask everyone, did the driver really deserve to win the championship? In 2014, you had to say, did Harvick really deserve the championship? 2015, did Busch really deserve the championship? 16, did Johnson deserve to win the championship? 17 and 19 were really the only two exceptions. 17, 18, and 19. They were the only two exceptions. Actually, in 2018, Logano won it. You could also throw that in there as a did he really deserve it type of scenario. In years past, you didn't have to worry about that. Even during the chase, you really didn't have to worry about that. I mean, more than likely, if the driver won the chase in the chase era, that driver either had the best car or was one of the best. Sometimes that wasn't always the case. You could always look at 2007 and think that was Gordon's race to win. But you can't also not deny that Johnson was also really, really good. And you can understand why he could have won the championship. But when you take a look at today's NASCAR and how the playoff format is built and structured, like there's a fine line between entertainment and value. And in my opinion, NASCAR is citing more, this playoff format is citing more with entertainment and is not caring so much on value. That is my opinion. And that's why I am not for this playoff grid. In my opinion, I think 2004 is the best format. It's simple, fair, and it's still fun. With this format, out of that three things, maybe fun. It can be fun. But the simple part, not really. And when you're explaining it to new fans, especially with the stage points. And fair, fair. That's always, that's again, that goes year by year. This playoff format will never, in my opinion, be good. This format will go down, in my opinion, as one of the worst formats. Because every single year, none of NASCAR fans can agree on whether the Final Four was this really the best of the best, or was it the best because of these certain circumstances. Again, in years past, you didn't have to worry about that. You knew the drivers that were racing for the championship, they were the best. Now, you always have to question yourself. Like this championship four. Is this championship four really the best of the best? You could say that for Hamlin, Harvick, for Hamlin, Logano, and Keselowski, but can you really say the same for Elliott? Again, I don't want to underwhelm Elliott's win. He played by the rules. Fair play to him. He made it to Phoenix. He did what he needed to do. Fair play. But again, the main question I have was, is this fair? And you can use example of, we'll look at other sports. I think if you use other sports as an example, you already lost the argument. Because NASCAR is not like other sports. We wouldn't have a separate sport name for NASCAR if it wasn't compared to other stick and ball sports. We call football, basketball, baseball stick and ball sports. We call NASCAR a motorsport. But I don't know. This race, amazing. But I don't know how I feel about this playoff grid. Like it's left a sour taste in my mouth. Again, I'm not the biggest Harvick fan, but he should have been in the championship for 100%. But yeah. What are your guys' thoughts on this race? Tell me in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts on Harvick being eliminated? Man, that's unbelievable. But yeah. That's going to conclude this episode of MDK Racing Victory Stop. Until next time, my name is Jack Krause from MDK, and I'll see you guys next time.